Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry. And this is all to provide you with education and inspiration. So I just got back recently from observing Preston Bailey wonderful conference called PB Live. And I was so pleased to hear so many people speak who have been on the show before, including Brian Raffanelli, Norma Cohen, Jennifer Zabinski, Andre Mayer, Marcy Bloom, Sonal Shah, who's going to be released in a few weeks, Ali Barone, Ron Ben Israel, Darcy Miller, Darren Olarsh, and Rebecca and Catherine of Engage. Yeah, practically the whole crew there. There were also some other people who I'm definitely going to be interviewing and was so excited to meet and hear. I really recommend you all check out PB Live. Preston puts it on twice a year, and he and Alejandra and the crew just put on such a great conference. So if you missed last week's episode, I want to tell you that it was the Bride Lux panel featuring in Manhattan, where we recorded it live, and I featured Sylvia Weinstock, Cece Johnson, and Christian Oth. And the topic was all about creating personal connection and relationship building between industry pros and clients. It was really well attended. I was so happy with it. So be sure to check out that panel. It's also really fun from last week. And so today's guest is owner and managing director of By Bruce Russell, and that is Bruce Russell. Based in London, he is a planner, designer, and coordinates wedding parties and other events around the globe. He was awarded Best Wedding Planner by Belle International Bridal Awards, and Bruce has been featured in international publications such as Brides, Mayfair Magazine, Hello Fashion, Sunday Times Style Magazine, and more. And his TV appearances include his role as co-star of RTE Ireland's production of My Big Day, Home or Away, with the co-star Tara Fay. So enjoy my conversation with Bruce Russell. Bruce, it is so good to be able to interview you, first of all, in person, but also here at Engage in Mexico.
Very exciting.
Yeah, what an opportunity, and the conference hasn't yet started. So before all the craziness, we get to sit down and do this.
Exactly.
So it's interesting, since you live in London, at first I expected an English accent. And then I discovered you were born in Nova Scotia and that you really grew up speaking French.
I did.
Well, I'm curious in terms of growing up in Nova Scotia, was there anything about your childhood that is connected to what you do today?
Gosh, I think, when you look back, there are a number of elements that you can sort of go, oh, yes, I was like that, or I did that as a child, or my upbringing was such. And I mean, I grew up in a very small town, French Acadian, in a fishing village, primarily.
Really? No kidding.
So, if you go back, 40 some odd years, I guess the upbringing was very local. It was very familial. It was very much about family life and community and all of that. Because, you walk into your local grocery store and everybody and everybody knows you. And, it was the time of, kitchen parties and people hosting at home because there was nowhere to go. There weren't any restaurants. There weren't any, it sounds like I'm from the sticks, but, that was kind of the cultural part was entertaining, always hosting. I'd spend Saturday mornings at my grandmother's to learn how to cook and prepare lunch and do things. And I think hosting and entertaining and being around people and making people happy with music or whatnot, it's part of my DNA.
So your parents, were they very socially oriented?
They were somewhat, yes. I think certainly around family and, weekends or holidays, it would always be group things or people traveling together or Sunday barbecues by the sea. It was just
sounds wonderful.
It does. And you took it for granted. Looking back on it now, it's, I wish we did more of that.
I'm getting this image. Did you ever see the movie Babette's Feast by any chance? Oh, it's wonderful. Everyone in the event business, especially catering and chefs, should watch it. I wish I could remember. It was a little town somewhere, I think in Eastern Europe, where Babette was this famous chef who, for some reason, needed to get away.
Yeah.
Moved to this little fishing village.
Yeah.
And so when you describe it, I'm immediately like seeing this, and it was this exactly what you're talking about. But it's a beautiful film. But so what about in school? Were you doing anything in school related to this?
No. I mean, again, growing up in kind of a more remote part of the world at that time, a number of years ago. I did high school, and thought, well, from that you go to university. If you don't go to university, you go to sort of what we call the vocational school,
yes,
where you learn a trade, either to become a plumber, electrician. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Or you were a fisherman, which, a number of my family, uncles and great uncles were, and that was kind of the tradition. I'm like, I'm not doing that either.
I hope you at least ate fish and seafood.
I did, I do more now than I did then.
That's funny. Yeah.
My uncle was a lobster fisherman, and I could have had lobster every day of the year, and I just hated it.
Listen, I went to Boston University for college. I did not like seafood until the goodbye dinner that I had with a bunch of friends. I finally tried fish. I fell in love with it, and then I moved away from that, But anyway.
But it was either, so the choices were kind of, you go to university and you either become a school teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer, kind of those 3 or 4 main professions if you wanted, because that's all I really knew. Who knew you could make a life out of planning parties and weddings.
Yeah.
So I went to French university, and my goal was to become a teacher, and become a guidance counselor, because I loved to sort of help people and try to guide them onto the right path, because I felt that I had sort of missed out on some of that.
Oh, interesting.
Based on where I was from.
So then what happened as you were getting ready to graduate? What happened at that time?
I just decided, I think it was the last summer before my final term. And I decided that, after doing a few internships and teaching, and I realized that I was not equipped, I think, personally, to be a parent to 35 children on a daily basis for the next 40 years of my life, and not have to take your work home. I get too attached, or I thought I would. Now people say, "Oh, do you like children?" Well, other people's children are fine.
Right.
So I didn't. I made the conscious decision of not doing that, and I got a summer job at the time working for a reservation call center for a hotel company that had just opened in New Brunswick, in the city where I was. And that it was a company previously to that who then merged with Fairmont Hotels. And I ended up being with Fairmont for 15 years, moving around Canada, the US, eventually to London, working in sales, marketing, PR, and events.
And you moved around, I think, from what I understand, Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, even New York City, working with the Plaza. Is that right?
I was at the Plaza before it closed for kind of the renovations and restoration that they did.
What were you doing at that point when you were in New York?
When I was in New York, I was in corporate sales. So I did corporate group sales, so events.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. It was just after 9/11. It was a very difficult time, I think, to be in New York. But
you were there, Bruce, right after.
I moved to New York in March.
Yeah.
So just after. Yeah, so the economy and the hotel business and everything. I was just excited to be in New York. But then, going to work every day and having to really work and justify your existence, and just, how many room nights have you booked? How much revenue have brought in this week?
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It was a lot of pressure on somebody who was, I would think I was about 28, 29 at the time. So, going into that and then moving into Manhattan and, traveling but it was, even you couldn't call them the worst of times, but even in bad times, they were great. It was an amazing experience.
I'm just thinking what a difference between the small fishing village and Manhattan, the concrete jungle.
Well, I often say now that a number of people, I think now we're connected through social media, through the internet. Everybody can see things. My entire hometown follows me on Facebook and Instagram, and they think I'm, a worldwide celebrity, which couldn't be further from the truth. But the thing is I'm privileged to be able to produce some amazing weddings and, for some very special people. And to them, it's beyond imagination, because that is not part of their world.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, why London? That's a big step.
London was, I was in New York, working for Fairmont for the Plaza. The Plaza was closing. So basically, and I'm a Canadian citizen. So I was in New York on a work visa, and the company on a company visa. And then they offered me the option of moving to Washington, DC to work for Fairmont there, which I was very close to doing. And then, Fairmont was actually taking over the management of the Savoy Hotel in London at the time. And I was approached along with somebody else who was working in the plaza to say, would you consider, moving to London? And this was sort of, I interviewed over the phone on the 21st of December, and on the 17th of January, I was on a plane to London.
Wow.
And had never been overseas.
No kidding.
Ever. So I, arrived on a cold, dreary, wet night in London at the age of 31 or 32. And I'm like, what have I done?
Not knowing anybody?
Not knowing anyone. Other than there was one person who I said had come over. But I was just like, how is this going to work?
Wow, I can't imagine at 31 starting over like that. I mean, I've moved a lot in my life. So what was it like? What was your position when you first got there?
I was a sales manager I was doing, I think, leisure individual sales. But, and eventually the company, shifted things and moved things around. But I was looking after the entire US market for leisure and corporate sales, basically. So I was actually in the US probably once a month.
Wow.
Traveling back. So that first year I really didn't bond, if you want, with London. But then the following year I said, okay, something's got to change because I need a life.
So how did you do that?
Just kind of managing the markets I was looking after, and then eventually, branching out and socializing and trying to make a life for myself in London. And 14 years now later.
That's how long. So how many years did you do that before you then started your own business?
I did. Gosh, I worked for the Savoy for probably 3 years. And then I moved into global sales for Fairmont, which became Fairmont Raffles and Swiss Hotels. So I was looking after European accounts for the groups. And then I started my business going on 8 years now.
So what was that like for you, Bruce? I mean, to strike out on your own, I'm also thinking, you're in your early mid 30s. You were in the corporate world, and I was too. So I understand the safety of that. And also, on the other hand, not as much risk, not as much creativity, in my opinion, in that situation. What was it like for you to make that decision and take that leap?
Well, I think part of what I loved about what I was doing outside of, let's say, the office was entertaining again. It came down to that, really, where we were hosting, fam trips, familiarization trips. So now I attend them. I used to host them. So on behalf of the hotels. And what ended up happening is you're putting together these itineraries, activities and dinners and planning the decor for the table and, just to impress these travel agents or clients and people. And somebody at one point, or somebody from the events team, I think, in the hotel we were at said, I wish I'd known you a year ago. You would have been amazing to plan my wedding. And something clicked with me and I thought, I can make money doing that.
Wow.
So that was kind of the first seed that was planted. And then I was on a business trip to the Maldives, of all places, with a colleague who looked after public relations for the group. And I said, I have an idea. I said, what do you think, if I'm thinking of just quitting it all and becoming a wedding planner. And she literally, within those 2 days, she had my entire business plan written down on paper napkins, which I still have to this day. So it's quite funny.
Oh, you should frame those. Yeah. Because you're doing so well now. But how did that feel to you? Did you feel fear?
It was, it came to the point where the reason I sort of didn't is that I was at a stage where I no longer had to be sponsored. So I didn't need a visa. I had permanent residency in the UK. I became a British citizen 3 years later, but I just had an opportunity and thought to myself, what would I do if I wasn't bound to a piece of paper and had to do this job? And I just sort of thought, this is an opportunity. And my now husband at the time said, why not? And I tried to try to keep working, but then jump into it. And I thought, no, this is not going to work. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right.
You quit
and
cold turkey?
I cold turkey, quit my job on the 30th of November and, quickly realized probably by the 1st of December, okay, how do I find a bride? It's not like you can
this
look.
This is after you went for it.
After I went for it. You can't pick up a phone book and find them. Yeah. You can't Google them until it's too late. But I then thought, well, what do I have? I have hospitality, I have experience. And it just so happened I did some part-time work with a sort of hotel representation company where I was looking after a hotel in New York for them for a few months in terms of meeting clients on their behalf. And then what happened is the Savoy had also closed for 3 years for a restoration.
Okay.
And they were just reopening. This was October 2010. So this would have been probably the beginning of that year, following year, 2011. And I just said, if you need anyone to sort of fill in, answer a phone, do something. And they were inundated, having been closed for 3 years, with just general inquiries for groups, for events, for weddings, for everything. So I said, here's what I'm doing now. Would you allow me, if you've got work for me to do on a part-time basis, that'll bring in some revenue and I can still promote my business on the other end.
What a brilliant idea.
But then what happened was the team would be like, oh, well, Bruce plans weddings, which I didn't really yet. We'll just give him all the wedding inquiries to handle.
Wow.
So I quickly realized that, certainly at that time, 8 years ago, as it was, 8.5, venue or hotel people often would take clients around or potential brides, grooms to be, and just say, this is how we set it up. This is where you have your table. This is the cost of menu A, B, or C. This is where you have your cake. Your photos are done here. Your ceremony is done in this format, in this configuration. And I thought, well, that's a pretty archaic way to look at it, because what if I don't want that? Yeah. But I love the building and I love the space. So it was very much, I put a proposal together at one point and said, for the Savoy, and said, I will manage all of your wedding inquiries. I will come in and do the site visits, venue visits with them, whether they want to come at 10 o'clock at night or on a Sunday morning at 9, when typically nobody would be in the office. I said, and you pay me a fee based on what I convert.
Interesting.
So you're not losing any money.
Okay.
And this was my way to get my name recognized in the industry. But I said, what I want to do is I'm doing it as Bruce Russell, and I'm still an independent wedding planner. I'm not a Savoy employee. I'll be a consultant for you.
See.
So I will do this if you want my way. And they said, well, let's do a 6-month trial. And that trial lasted 6 years.
Wow. That is so creative. Well, I would like to dive now into your style. I read somewhere, not sure if it was on your site or an interview, you said event production is very theatrical. I'm a theater producer in that sense, bringing actors and pieces together to create most memorable of experiences. Bruce, I love that. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, and I actually came up with it at some point.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
But to me, it is theatrical and it is theater, and it's more than just an event or more than just a wedding, it's bringing people together. And I always explain, part of my sort of, brief the week before the wedding to a couple is, your wedding day, once we turn on that switch, it doesn't stop. Nothing is going to stop this. It is like a theater production. The show has to go on.
Yeah.
Things will be perfect. Things will not be so perfect. But in the eyes of your, of the guests, of the attendees, it will just be wonderful for them. And it's just trying to get them to understand that, and that things don't always go as perfectly as we want them to be. So to me, it's bringing in all of the components and the individual. I am but a conduit to try and really group the people together to bring a vision that we've done, created together to life.
Yeah. And
it's putting all those pieces together and then actually producing the show, and then, here we go.
So how do you go about putting together that vision? And I'd love to talk about weddings and other events. So what is your process with a wedding?
The start is, and not every client is for me. I'm not for every client, but I think what I do try to do is, and which most planners probably do, is understand the couple. I really want, most of my initial consultations or conversation with them is really about who are you as a couple, as individuals, because this might be new to you, being a couple, or hopefully not too new, to be going into marriage. But I think it's important to understand likes and dislikes, because what you find is often, more so than not, they either haven't necessarily thought about it, or they've individually thought about it, but they haven't had a conversation to really find out what they want. So for me, it's trying to, almost be the therapist in the room and really get them to open up. Because without, you can tell me you have a budget of X, or you can tell me, oh, there is no budget, or you can say, I want this, 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 and this. That's all fine. But I want to understand how the logistics is going to come together, because I need to bring together the individuals who are going to be able to make this happen at the price that you're willing to pay for it. And I need to have the confidence that I can actually do that.
Yes. So, and that's a process. You meet with them together and you're having a conversation, basically.
Completely. And it's very much about, because at that point, I think most of my business comes through word of mouth, or it's people who have found me mostly now on Instagram, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And I think, from a visual perspective, there's enough out there that you can see what I do, how I do. And, if you read a bit, and whether it's looking at a website or Instagram and looking at people I've worked with, or, the creative partners that I bring together, people have a general idea of who you are. But I think for me, it's giving them the personal side of me when I meet with them, so that they, A, feel comfortable, and B, can trust me, because it is all about trust.
Yes.
Once you have that, then you can actually do your job. If you don't, the process for the next, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, is going to be hell for everyone.
Yeah. So it's that magic word again, connecting, basically.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, connecting very personally.
Because it is about personalities. And I think, I've gone in for jobs where you walk in the door and you think, this isn't going to work. Or, even from an email conversation, you think, no, that's just not right. And, your gut instinct tells you, and you go into it and, it isn't. I would turn business down, or I've really only tried to turn business down once, and it backfired, because I thought, well, I'll charge them more, and they ended up paying
and they
for
hired
it.
you.
Yeah, but it was okay. They're still married, I think.
Well, there's also there's an interview, I believe, with Karen Cinnamon. You had said, I thought this was really interesting. You said weddings are the time when a couple is making their biggest decisions financially with their emotions.
Completely.
Can you
I find that
financially,
and I still
with their
find
emotions?
that crazy. And it's, I think, if with most conversations or most issues that come up, between planner or couple or parents or whoever, if I look back on any of the weddings I've done, a number of if there have been issues or sort of, things that you think, oh, what would you change? It's been financially related. And most of if you dive deeper into those individual events, it's been that it's run by emotions.
Yeah.
But, you would never buy, a house or,
that's right,
property or something based on, I'm in love with this. Yes, you do, but you do your due diligence and you do understand the legalities and formalities and everything else that comes with it. Unless you have, enough money to throw at anything, but you're making decisions with your heart.
Yeah. So you're guiding them in that way to help them do that.
Trying to say, well, yes, we can, but here's how it will impact.
Yeah.
Or here's what could happen. Here could be the repercussions of that.
And going back to what you said a couple minutes ago in terms of connecting and all of that, needing to connect with the couple, you had also said somewhere, people buy people.
Completely. I think that. Or I should say, I enjoy working with people who buy people.
Who like people?
Who buy people.
Buy people, right.
As in will buy into me because, that connection is there or that works. It's if you're looking for the planner who is going to, just do everything you say or just follow orders or just run around and, be your slave assistant, someone, that's not me.
Yeah. You also said, this ties right into it. You said planning is collaborative, centered around our clients' needs and bringing our collective visions to life. We begin the process with a clean slate as each event is unique and personal.
Completely. I would say, sometimes people say, oh, what's your style or what's it? I don't have a style or I don't have a specific clientele.
Yeah.
I live 90 minutes outside of London. most of my clients are not British. Half of what I do is probably international, so it's not necessarily in the UK. And I think that's been conscious or not conscious in terms of how I've done it, but I'm not from London. I'm not originally British. I don't have a network socially of, London or British potential clients. I'm not that person. But then that to me just means that I'm a bit more, I guess, available or different enough to cater to a wider audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, your experience is so interestingly varied. I mean, I think a lot of people I've had on the show do come from different aspects of the industry, a lot of them before they get to where they have their own business. Yeah. But yours is so, and also culturally, it's very, very varied.
Completely. I mean, I probably do 1 to 2 weddings a year in Marrakesh.
Huh.
Why? I speak French.
Oh,
so
right.
it's a little bit easier. But going back to the first wedding I ever did there, it was the wedding for the bride was actually an ex-PR person who had worked for the company that did the PR for the hotel company I worked for. Mm-hmm. So, there was a personal connection there. And I did her and her husband's wedding. His family was from France. Her family was from the UK, and did my first wedding there. And after that, just from images and posts and interviews and all of that, people were like, "Oh, you did a wedding at the Belle Country Club. How was it? We've been trying to deal with them, and Moroccans, it's a bit slower. It's culturally different.
Yeah.
So we'd love for you to plan our wedding." And that kind of started that trend.
Yeah.
But then that kind of got me more into destination as well. So. Which I love doing.
I can't imagine, the challenges doing that. How do you deal with the challenges? I mean, there's the cultural challenge issue. Then there's also just getting the local teams in different areas.
Yeah. My team is small. Mm-hmm. It's quite scaled back. So there's an assistant, there's number 2, and there's me. Mm-hmm. And basically I do between 5 and 8, 10 at a push events, weddings a year. Which means I can be a little bit more selective on what I do. But also that means, or it gives me the flexibility of working anywhere, because then I build the team based on the event or the location. So if I have a wedding that is more, if it's a marquee wedding, let's say outside of London, and I need sort of, more of a producer designer to help me bring that to life. So I'll hire the producer designer for that. But then again, if we're in Morocco and I need someone local to help me find all of the, small items to help decor and create and design things, then I'll hire someone locally for that. Doing a big Indian wedding next year in London where the couple's from California and most of the guests are coming from the US, but I'm hiring a planner from India as well to help me with the cultural elements that brings in, because I don't necessarily have that experience.
But how do you go about finding these local experts who you can then trust?
I think a lot of it is research, word of mouth, but, and I'm not going to say because of Engage, but essentially because of our industry. We are fortunate enough to network with some of the best people around the world. And, if I haven't done a wedding in the south of France, I can probably pick up the phone and find someone who has.
Right.
And phone them and say,
and then they'll tell
you did this, how would you do that? And I think, again, it comes down to a certain element of collaboration as well. We're all, not all, but most of us are small independent businesses.
That's right.
Who aren't necessarily event companies. But I think we all realize that, we will do something new, and, it's great to help each other out when we can.
Yeah. Haven't you planned weddings at Versailles?
I haven't. I always said that would be my goal. Anytime anybody asks me, where would you love to plan a wedding? I don't know why. I just have this vision.
But that's it. Yeah.
Versailles would be top of the list. I think.
Now that we put it out on this podcast, I imagine it will come. Also, it's interesting, in learning more about you, I found that you had talked about flow and entertainment being such a critical part of every wedding, and how it should be so immersive and interacting. And can you talk about that, about flow and entertainment, and what you mean by that?
For me, it's about keeping the senses occupied. And it's very much, I think going back to when I started, which, it's only 8 years ago, but still feels like a lifetime ago, and things change so quickly now. It's just making sure that your guests are entertained, but they're continuously entertained. But entertainment to you might not be the same as what it means to me.
Yeah.
So you may love a band, but I may love something quite a bit more visual, and it's just trying to keep things flowing and moving and not be, if something stops, it should never stop. There should be something that started already, or something else that people can focus on. Because as soon as there's nothing, or there's a break, we'll call it a break somewhere, that's where people look for something. They'll look for something. They're not knowing that they're looking for something wrong, but something may be going wrong and they'll notice. Whereas if you keep them entertained and that flow going, they'll never notice.
Can you give me some examples? Like some of your favorite?
Okay. There is one, probably shouldn't even say this out loud. There's one example where, and this was a logistically challenging wedding. We had 90 days to plan 4 parties in London. The bride was from Boston. The groom was from Pakistan. And
wait, did you say 90 days?
90 days.
Okay.
I did nothing for 3 months. Literally, we did nothing else for 3 months. And, it was a beautiful wedding. So there was, cultural Iranian, Pakistani elements to it. And we had the ceremony. So we had an Iranian ceremony. So we had sofre and, procedure, and we had this live entertainment. I forget exactly what it was. There was an element of choir, but then there were strings and all of those elements for that. And because the officiant, or that's probably not his name, didn't really speak English, I didn't know exactly when the ceremony would end.
Oh, no.
I knew that there would be clapping, and I knew that there was an element of something, but I didn't know when it would end. And long story short, basically, the bride gave me the rings.
Yeah.
And I normally never take responsibility for anything on the day, because you can be pulled in so many directions. But for some reason, I took the rings, and she's like, can you just put them on the front of the sofa by our chairs so that they're there? So I went downstairs to the ballroom, put them down. And as I was doing that, and I mean, these rings were from, a very good jeweler, and probably worth more than the entire wedding.
Right.
But I put them down on the sofa, and I thought, they're just about to clear the room to do photos and video. So I thought, well, I can't really leave them here. What if they go missing?
Yeah.
So I thought, no, I'll put them down just before the guests come into the room. Did that. But as things go, I'm being called somewhere else. So all of a sudden the bride says, can you come up here? So I'm running around, and I've got these rings in my pocket.
Yeah.
I had them in a bag, and I had to go to my room in the hotel where we were. And I walked into the room to get something. And as I walked in the room, just at the door, I put the bag on the floor.
Yeah.
And I didn't pick it up.
I'm getting nervous, and I
didn't pick it up on the way out. I know, I'm trying to be quick. So I didn't pick it up on the way out. So the ceremony starts, everything's happening, music is playing, the clapping happens, we're almost at the end, and I'm sort of standing discreetly in the back by the door, and I'm in eye line of the bride and groom, so they can see me, I can see them if they want to, but I'm sort of behind the guests. And all of a sudden, the music is still playing, and producers asking me in my ear, when do they leave? What's happening? I'm like, give me a second. And then all of a sudden I see the bride, and you can't see this, but she just points at her ring finger.
No. Yeah.
And if I could have sort of fallen through the floor, I probably would have. And I just had no expression on my face. I turned around. I opened the door to the foyer. I walked into the foyer, and I looked at my assistant, Maddie, and I said, rings. And I just shouted this out. And she just ran to my room, literally across the entire hotel, grabbed the box or the bag, brought the rings back down to me. And my heart was pounding so much. And I'm like, just keep the music playing. Right. And then had someone go into the front. And I mean, somebody noticed something was going on, but nobody really knew. Because, had the music stopped all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah.
Then guests would have been like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So then rumbling and stuff. So no, we just kept the flow. Nothing could stop.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that was stressful.
The worst. I think the worst.
Well, and you've said
funny after the fact.
Yeah, well, yeah, you could talk about it and smile.
So I never, ever
I bet you've never
handle a ring again, right? Ever.
Well, you have said again in another interview, wedding planning is in the top 5 of the most stressful jobs. How do you handle the pressure?
It's a way, I describe it, it's a way of thinking. And I think we all have that. We think logistically. And I try not, as couples are planning with emotion, I plan with logistics and try not to get emotionally involved. You have to at some point because you are, because we are those types of people. We're creatives. We are, emotional, and you try not to show it. So thankfully, massages and therapy help. But just try to detach myself personally a little bit. Yeah. I think you have to.
Well, and you also said, though, at the same time, I read this somewhere, stress keeps me going and keeps me on my toes and keeps me focused. So you're really framing it in a more positive way.
Yeah, it does. It does, I think, because I remember, and I don't have them anymore, thankfully, but I would always have this dream the week of a wedding at some point that the whole thing something goes drastically wrong or I, on a day of a wedding, forget to wake up and I miss the ceremony, but which would never happen, hopefully. But so there's always this way you're on. And I said, if you get to the point that you're just so blasé or complacent or a little bit kind of you're not like that, then I think that's where things would, for me anyway, probably start going wrong.
Yeah, but I love that. I do love how you frame it because it does keep us on our toes. I mean, learning how to manage that aspect of our jobs, I think it takes a long time to figure out, and it's part of it.
Well, I think if you look, even if you look at any normal day, you would never go any normal day without eating. But how many planners have gone an entire wedding day without having a bite of food until there's leftover cake or icing?
Right.
You're never able to do that. But yet once you're in the throes of things, you just go. It's amazing.
Yeah. I would love to also learn more about the TV show that you have with Tara Fay, which is RTE's flagship lifestyle show, My Big Day, Home or Away. And I believe you're entering your 2nd season now, or you're in it?
Yes. Well, we've just, we filmed this year. We filmed season 1, which is 4 episodes, which aired in September. So, Tara approached me. Well, Tara and I met at a wedding event. I can't remember how many years ago now, maybe 5-6 years. And she was approached because it's an Irish show produced for an Irish TV network, and said, they're thinking of doing this reality show. They've come up with this concept, which is My Big Day, Home or Away. So essentially, you have a couple who have a budget and they're paying themselves. They don't get any money for doing this.
Oh, okay.
So they're paying for their wedding, but they don't know if they want to get married at home in Ireland or abroad. So Tara presents them with an option at home, and I present them with an option abroad, and then they have to choose the planner/wedding they want.
Okay.
And then we have to go and plan the wedding.
Yeah.
So it's actually
planning it together, by the way, or
we end up planning it together.
Okay.
Yes. Well, we weren't supposed to the first when we did the pilot, but we just, based on workloads, we just had to do it that way and time constraints.
That's great.
But actually, we discovered on the back of that we're very different, but we have similar business ethics and we work well together.
Yeah.
And we sort of complete each other in certain ways. It's almost like a married couple some days, but it's been entertaining, let's say. It's a lot of hard work.
Okay.
But on the back of it, we've discovered that actually, there are so many people out there who could never afford the services that we provide.
Yes.
And who have, to them, their €20,000 budget is worth as much as $1 million wedding to
absolutely.
them. And why shouldn't they be able to expertly plan their wedding?
Yeah.
Even if they do it on their own. So we're trying to give back in the sense of educating them by way of digital media. So through our YouTube channel that we're just launching. So we've created a duo brand called Bruce and Tara Live, which is essentially Bruce and Tara together as a duo. what I and Tara is similar in personality, I guess. What we are not great at is tooting our own horn individually. So I would not want to put myself out there for people to then say, oh, look, it's Bruce Russell and he knows everything and he's now doing this to tell the world how to do things. I was often approached to say, well, why don't you consult or do a masterclass, or would you do this? I said, because I don't want people going out in the world saying that they're now certified to plan weddings because they've done a course with me. And that's just a personal thing for me. And Tara is somewhat that way. So, but as a duo, we're more confident to do that because it's not, and we've been going through the brand identity, with a digital media agency to try and see, who are Bruce and Tara? What is this brand? What do you want to do? And, the one thing that came out of that experience was, we're experts, not influencers. So there's a difference to what we have to communicate to the world. We're just really trying to educate people on how to do things well and raise the bar on what everybody else from venues or, how they do things and just raise the bar.
What is it like having cameras following you around constantly? And, what's that like?
I try not to watch myself back. No. Yes. Hence why I'm trying to kick up the fitness regime, after you see yourself on television. But honestly, it's, as I said, I don't think I could do it alone.
Yeah.
But doing it together, we just feed off each other, personality wise, and we just have fun with it. But also what we've been able to do is not let, and this is what our Talk It Engage here is about this week. It's kind of the reality of reality television. And the reality is that once you sign that contract, you don't know where it's going to go or how it's going to be edited or how you're going to look.
Oh, that's right.
When we're told by a director to, because reality is, a lot of it is fed. Those, lines that you hear people say or comment, they've been directed in that way indirectly, if that makes sense. But so, the director may say, oh, could you do this? And I'd be like, why? Because it's not, and they're like, well, why won't you do it? Because it's something that I, Bruce Russell, as an event planner would not do.
Yeah.
And, or I'll tell Tara, well, they're going to ask you to do this, but I've said no. Or, so, we support each other in that way.
So they want to create tension. They want to create drama.
Well, exactly. And our, key phrase all the time is, you tell us where you want to get to and what you want to get, and we'll get you there in our own way. Which for us makes for more genuine and real TV or real experience, because it's how we would be. At the end of the day, most of the people watching the show don't know who we are. Yeah. But for us, it's important to still be able to look back and say, well, actually, that is us, because that's how we are and that's what we do. So we'll give you drama if you want it, but we'll do it in our own way.
I imagine. Well, I mean, you want to establish your own voice and your voice together, the two of you.
Completely.
And so you feel that you're there yet?
I think we're there. I think we get it. I think there are many opportunities that we could explore with this. And I think it's, for me, it's an interesting part of my business, because it's kind of, you're not alone, if that makes sense in terms of what you do. And I think Tara feels the same way, but, we're hoping to really be able to A, have fun, B, create a brand or something, destination, if you want, online that people trust. And that's the main thing, and go to for wedding information, inspiration, and education. Yes. When they can't afford to pay for it.
Yeah. No, I love this idea. I would love to be able to get copies of it. Well, I'll go to the new YouTube channel that you're talking about.
So the YouTube channel, we're really basically, that is just starting, and it's sort of 9-10 minute conversations basically between Tara and myself, where we sit there and, tell you what to look for in a venue contract. How many people sign a venue contract and don't even read it?
That's right. Good point.
What to look for, what should be there with vendor contracts as well. What happens, what's your plan for the cake if it sort of falls to pieces on the floor? How do you fire a bridesmaid? Yeah. That's been fun. But they're kind of questions that people will ask you, or people don't think to ask. But we also do it in a Bruce and Tara way, where it's us.
Right.
We're professional. It's professionally done. We're not sitting at home in our bed, talking to an iPhone.
Sure.
We want to still keep the standard of what we produce so that people buy into and trust.
We'll have to have a link in the show notes so that people can check this out.
Fantastic.
So, just a couple more questions. How are you balancing your life, Bruce? I mean, you're married, you've got your business, you've got the show. How are you doing this?
Do I have balance? Probably not. People probably who know me would laugh at this. I think for me, it's important to, my home life is great in the sense of I don't live in the city. I live in the countryside.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Have an office at home. I don't, I try to get to the gym. I love swimming. That clears my head. I love to, for me, relaxing is entertaining at home and having friends over. Do I know the latest restaurants in London? Probably not, because I try not to eat out. We do enough of it when we entertain or when we're traveling to engage or doing all of that. So I think there's sort of extremes to my personalities in a sense, whereas I love being at home, but I also love to be social and entertain and do what I do. So it's just trying to keep my personal and professional lives separate a little bit.
I think it's really critical for us in this industry. We're all so busy. We're working, many of us, at least 6 days a week. I mean, we've got to make that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think my problem is not making enough time for myself. And I think once you've had, I've had a year last year, which were, a number of personal things and bereavements and things like that, which really, I think, pushed you to kind of get more perspective and just stop and look at things and go, what needs to change?
Yes.
Or how do I need to change this? And what do I want? What will make that change good for me? So I think it's a constant evolution and path that we're on. But, one day I'll figure it out.
Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for being on the show. I really love this conversation, and we'll be seeing each other throughout these next few days here at Nizuk.
Yes, definitely. Well, sun is shining. We're on the ocean.
Yeah. How could you? Right.
It's fantastic.
Right. All right. Well,
a tequila or two.
Yeah. Right. All right. I'll meet you there.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Bruce Russell. Be sure to check out his website at bybrucerussell.com. Again, that's bybrucerussell.com. His social media handle is Bruce Russell. And be sure to check out the show notes on our website at theweddingbiz.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'm sure that you did, please share it with your friends and colleagues. It's a great way for people to find out about the show, and I really appreciate it. And also giving a really great review on iTunes or wherever you get the podcast is also very helpful to people finding us. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment on Wednesday that happens with each interview called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we tease out some of the highlights of the interview of the week and break them down into some specific tactics and tips to help you raise your own business to the next level. And I'm excited to say that this week's guest co-host is going to be Tara Fay, planner and designer based in Dublin, Ireland, who's going to be on the show a week later. And she is also the co-star with Bruce of the TV show My Big Day Home or Away. And so, again, next week's episode is going to be Tara Fay, whom I just mentioned. Be sure to tune in for that. And I want to thank our sponsor, Kushner Entertainment. That's KushnerEntertainment.com, where you can get absolutely incredible talent with bands and more. Also a custom curated experience. They travel all over the world. That's KushnerEntertainment.com. And we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.